Hey guys, kinggath here, and welcome to Bethesda Mod School. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to quickly and easily generate the lip sync data needed for your mod. Now, it's all automatic, and I'm going to walk you through this process, and it's going to take like a minute to go through and actually generate these. Maybe a little longer depending on how my computer decides it wants to run tonight. But as far as hands-on work, it's very minimal. It's just a couple of clicks. I copy and paste something. It's super easy. And the reason I'm showing you this first is because this video is quite long, but it only represents your initial setup time and me teaching you. Because there's a bunch of little stuff I have to teach you. But the actual work for generating lip sync data, once you have all these steps done up front, where you've copied all these files into place and everything, and you understand the workflow, and you learn about the things to watch out for when I show you all these things, it's so easy. It's one of the easiest things to do. It's really, really cool. So I'm going to walk you through the process of what it's going to look like in the future after you understand all this. So you're going to run this bat file. You're going to type in the name of your mod. Now, I've got mine copied in my clipboard already. You type in the full plugin name, including the extension, so .esp for this. We push enter. This will launch a copy of the creation kit, and it's going to start generating the lip sync data. And now this is the first step of the generating lip sync data. There's a couple other steps we have to do after that, but it will do it all automatically. Now, if you read Bethesda's documentation or other people's documentation often, it will tell you that this process takes hours. I find that's not true at all. What actually takes hours is if you wait for it to complete whatever the creation kit thinks it's doing. I find none of it is valuable, none of it is necessary, and I've never found any consequences for doing it the way I'm going to show you. And I've been doing quest mods for going on to a year and a half now, pretty consistently. So if you guys know of an issue with what I'm about to show you, if those of you who have done quest mods, definitely let me know in the comments or contact me directly, and I'll re-educate folks. But what I find is when all this stuff starts running here, you'll see that the creation kit's doing something here. It's got this facial animation thing. What I actually end up looking at is I'll go into my data sound voice folder and then into the folder named after my mod, and I'll look at my voice type folders. And if you don't know that these are voice type folders, you need to go to my Dialogue 101 tutorial, and I'll just look at them and just make sure that there's a .lip file to match each of my .waves. As long as that's the case, I'm good to go. I can cancel this out. Sometimes, even if there's not enough .lip files, I know that this is done, and I'll talk about that toward the end of the video, some gotchas that can come up. But for the most part, once I see that all the lip files are generated, I just crash this out. So I'm just going to go ahead and start clicking, or I'll right click here and hit close to try and force it. And once I get this, hit close this program, cancel. And now you'll see back on my bat file here, it says press any key to continue. So that's done. So now we've got our lip file generation. If we were to pop in game, this would work. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the full workflow again for the sake of you guys seeing how easy this is in the long term. So that's the first step. You run this bat file, crash out the CK. Then you're going to run this XWM bat, which I'll have for you, which will generate the file, which will generate the next stage of the file, which are super compressed versions of WAV files. And you can see this .wave is 189K. This one is 11.7K. It's crazy how much this compresses it. Then lastly, you'll run this lipfuser-xwm.bat file, and that will combine the two together into a .fuse file, which is a little bit bigger than the XWM because it basically merges the XWM with the .lip. And these fuse files are what you include with your mod. So as you can see, ultra tiny, and you can pretty much go nuts with them without upsetting players too much because they're so damn tiny, especially compared to the original WAV files. So that's what you end up releasing. And then this stuff you tend to delete. What I like to do is instead of deleting everything, I will delete the lip and XWM, and I will take all of these waves and back them up somewhere else. So then if I ever need to regenerate this data for some reason, so for example, maybe we made some tweaks to some of the audio lines, or we decided to choose different facial animations, so we want new lip files generated to match them, I'll back up the WAV file. That way I can always regenerate, because if you keep only the fuse and you reinflate the fuse, there are tools to extract the audio out of .fuse, and I'll show that one day in some other tools video. There are tools, especially on the Skyrim side of things, that work for Fallout 4, where you can extract a WAV file from the fuse, but each time you do that, the quality degrades. And so having the original source wave is really, really important, especially with the correct file name, because what you'll learn as you go further into this dialogue series and I start showing you some of the steps, you're going to find that eventually you get to a point where you have to manually name these files, so you won't want to have to manually rename them again. So I highly recommend just keeping this backed up. But for the sake of just showing you, I would basically just delete these, and there we go. Now I've got this fuse file. It's ready to be packed into my BA2 and shipped off to players to enjoy. So that's it. That's the steps. But now I'm going to go back and I'm going to get you guys set up with an environment that works like this, because by default, your environment is not going to have this. You're not going to have these bat files. You're not going to have all these EXEs in the right place. There are some gotchas to take care of, and there's a current problem at the time of this recording with the version of the creation kit that ships with Fallout 4. But fortunately, a wonderful user in the community has solved that issue. So now let's go into getting your environment all set up. All right, so the first thing we got to do is acquire some tools. So we're going to start with this lip generator bat file, the very first file you saw me run. Now, I'm hoping to be able to include this with the mod school resources, but at this time I have not yet heard back from Lazy Radley. So if I don't hear back, I won't be including it, but assuming I do, it might be in there. But if it's not in there, then go ahead and download this from here. The link will be in the description, and if I forget that for some reason, it's in the, you should be able to zoom in and see that on the video. But this bat file is real straightforward, and you're going to want to drop that into your Fallout 4 directory. So that would be in your Steam Apps Common Fallout 4. And when you get it, it's going to come as a 7-zip file. You're going to want to extract that to get to the bat file. So make sure you're grabbing the bat file and not just the original file you downloaded. There are other 2 bat files you guys saw me run. I'm pretty sure I wrote those myself or someone pasted the code to me, but if I'm wrong about that, I will be including those with Bethesda mod school resources for sure. And if somebody out there is watching them, if you open those up and you recognize the exact code and you're like, I 100% know I wrote this, I apologize. I did not mean to do that. I was under the assumption. It's been so, I've had these forever. I've had these for years. And so I've just assumed that I created them or somebody pasted them, because I can't find any reference to them anywhere else. I have looked on the Skyrim section, the Fallout section of Nexus, trying to find it to see if I grabbed these resources from somebody else. I can't find any path of them. So I think I wrote them. They're real straightforward. So hopefully no one's going to mind. But the other ones you're going to need are in the Bethesda mod school resources. And then the last tool we're going to need, I'll talk about in a second. So first, we've got that copy there. So the next thing we're going to do is grab some tools from Bethesda, and then we'll talk about the other tool we need from Nexus. So we're going to go into our tools folder in Fallout 4 and then the lipgen folder. And don't mind if you have less folders than I do. I have all sorts of utilities in here that I just put here just to not lose track of them. But you should have a tools lipgen folder. If you don't have this, it means you probably installed the creation kit to some other directory besides Fallout 4. And I would recommend you go back and install creation kit in Fallout 4 just for the sake of access of files. If you have already worked out a way to make the creation kit work without doing that outside another directory, so be it, but the directory will most likely be in wherever you installed the creation kit. But I've found that just tends to not work well for various reasons. So if you know a way, great. But I would say for the most part, if you're watching this series, you probably are looking to find a way to do this from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and copy these 3 files: creationkit32.exe, gfsdk_godraiselib.win32.dll. It's a hell of a file name. And then ssce5532.dll. So you're going to grab these 3. We're going to copy them. We're going to go back into our Fallout 4 directory and paste those. I already had them copied. Obviously, I've been doing it here for a while, so they are overwriting, but you guys shouldn't have them already, so those should be fresh files you're grabbing. The next thing we need to do is temporary. This is something that by the time you watch this video might be obsolete, but at the time of this recording, which is February 2020, you do need this. So with the 1.10.162 release of Fallout 4, which was most of the releases that Bethesda does now for Fallout 4 tend to correspond with Creation Club releases. They'll have to do some, changes to the EXE or whatever to support new content. And so that with this patch, they changed something in the creation kit that was required. And unfortunately, they did not make the same change to one of those files we just copied. So we just copied a file called creationkit32.exe. This is an old 32-bit version of the creation kit. I believe it came from Skyrim, and they used it just for this lip file generation. It's a real hacky method they have that they included. I'm glad they included it, but it's a little hacky. And they failed to include an updated version of that creation kit to support the new Fallout 4 ESP. The EXE rather. So we have to patch manually that 32-bit EXE, but this is almost certainly temporary. Myself and several other modders have been in touch with people at Bethesda. They've told us they're going to get it fixed. They just don't know when. My assumption will be it'll happen alongside some sort of Creation Club update. We're currently on version 1.6.3 of Fallout of this. So if you find you're on 1.6.4, 1.6.5, something like that, you probably don't need to do this step. But I would just check this mod page here. I assume the author, Big and Flabby, or Jonathan Ostris, as a lot of us know him, he will probably take this down if it's no longer relevant, because he will not want the troubleshooting problem and all the bug reports that will come in if it is relevant. So, but check this mod page; it'll probably tell you. But I would assume that with probably 1.6.4 or 1.6.5 of Fallout, we won't need it anymore. So for now, we do need it. So you're going to download this file, and I'm going to walk you through how to patch this, because I found this file the first time I used it a little bit unintuitive. It was just expecting me to do something that I didn't expect right away, and I almost missed a step. But we're going to go ahead and extract this guy here, and so you'll extract this zip file and open up in here, and we're going to use this xdeltaui.exe. And don't worry, this doesn't overwrite. This actually creates a new file, so you don't have to worry about this like overwriting permanently something or breaking something. This is just literally removing a little check from the exe that allows it to bypass the issue with that Fallout 1.6.2 version. So we're going to go ahead and click open on the patch, and then we're going to navigate right back to this folder. So it should default there. If it doesn't, just go back to the same folder you extracted to, and you'll find this creationkit32_check_remove.xdelta. We're going to grab that. Then for our source file, we're going to go into our Fallout 4 directory, which I have shortcutted here, and we're going to find that creationkit32.exe. And then our output file, we're going to go right back in that Fallout 4 directory, and I'm going to just call it creationkit32patched.exe. And we'll go ahead and hit save, and then hit patch. And then it'll say file patch successfully. If it didn't patch successfully, it means that the exe you have of CreationKit32 doesn't match this version. You probably need to go repair your Fallout 4 files, update them in Steam, something like that. So if this doesn't work, you need to do that, or maybe the issue's been resolved and this just isn't necessary anymore. So at the time of this recording, that's exactly what should happen. If it doesn't happen, I would go to this mod page and see if it has any more information on the description or anything. All right, so now we're going to go back to our Fallout 4 here. Now, that bat file that we copied is assuming creationkit32.exe. So we have two options here. You can either take the old exe and rename it. So something like, add a -unpatched, and then rename your patched version to creationkit32.exe. Or if you want to leave the modified one named modified, which might be a smarter way to do it. I chose to do it the other way, but maybe you guys find that that's stupid and you want to do it another way. The other thing you could do is right-click on this bat file, hit edit, and I got off screen over here, and just go ahead and change the CreationKit32 here to the CreationKit32 patch. That should work. I haven't done it that way, but I assume that would work, because it's smart enough to grab that. So just add the name of the full name of whatever you have the exe, just without the extension. That should do it. If I'm wrong, and then just do it the way I just showed you with renaming the old one to unpatched and renaming the new one to just CreationKit32.exe. Okay, so now that part's solved. All right, so now this next step is kind of optional. You don't have to do it this way. I just like to do it this way because it just helps my own workflow when I'm speeding up or trying to speed things up and go quickly. So you guys saw that I just ran a couple of bat files. Well, before I did that, I actually have to copy over some exes and whatnot. Excuse me. So I'm going to show you where to get these exes, because I'm not going to include these with the distributable, but I am going to include these two bat files. So in the Bethesda Mod School resources, you'll find two bat files. I'm just copy pasting them from off my hard drive because I don't know exactly where they'll be in the resource kit. I'll try to make it obvious, but you're going to find these two bat files in that Bethesda Mod School resources zip file, the lipfuser-xwm.bat and xwm.bat. You're going to go ahead and copy these into a folder. I like to just, I put it here because what you're going to end up finding is that it's quicker to run these from within inside the voice file where all your voice files are stored, rather than trying to run it from anywhere else where it has to process every mod. So creating this little audio conversion kit, as I've called it, for yourself will just save you time in the long run. Okay, so the next things you need for your little audio conversion kit are provided by Bethesda, and these are some exes. So you're going to go into your tools directory again in Fallout 4, and then under audio, and the first one we want here is XWMA and code. We're going to grab that, and we're going to just paste it into our audio conversion kit. You probably won't have this Yakitori. This is actually a community built one that is available on the Skyrim site that I've used occasionally to success to do things like decompiling music files. It doesn't work all the time though. So there are a bunch of those community available tools that you'll see in my directory that I've had various levels of success with. The next thing we need is the lipfuser file, which that is under lipgen and then lipfuser, and we want this lipfuser.exe. So we're going to go ahead and paste that in here. So now these 4 files right here are what we need to generate the XWM and fuse files. Now, in theory, and I think I've done this before and just opted not to anymore, you could combine these into a single bat file instead of having to run it twice. But one of the little potential issues you'll run into, I found it was better that I find out during the first step than later, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So once you've got your little audio conversion kit, whenever you need to do conversion, what you'll do is go back into your Fallout 4 data folder, and then sound, and then voice, and then the name of your plugin. So, in our case, we were doing this one. And then I just grab all the files from my audio conversion kit and I copy them there. And what will happen here is these are all set up to run based on the directory and any subdirectory. So they will only process then the audio files for my mod, rather than if I had dropped them up here and run them, it would process every single mod. So that's just the way I wrote those batch files, or somebody wrote those batch files. I got to remember, somebody else might have wrote them. It's been so long I don't remember. So when we go back, if you think about those steps I did at the beginning, basically now once you've got this set up, you've got all the files in place where you need them. When you're ready to convert audio, you start by running inside your Fallout 4 directory this lip generator. You'll type in the full name of your plugin, including the ESP, run it, the CK will launch, and then you'll keep an eye on all of your voice directories and look to make sure that the lip files exist. Once that is done, you can crash out of the CK that opens. I'm going to just end this. And then once you have your lip files generated, so I'll go ahead and delete these just so we can walk through the process again. Once you have your lip files and your waves there, you'll start by running xwm.bat, which will go ahead and run those. Now, I have this set up to force you to press any key to continue. The reason for that is one of the first things I want to talk about where you can run into an issue. So normally you would just have bat files shut themselves down, but the reason I have this set up this way is because this can occasionally run into an error, and if you just check up a few files to see if you have any errors, it's a good plan. What can happen is that these XWA and this XWA encoding can fail, and it can be hard to recognize that if you have a ton of files. And so generally, if you're recording all of your audio files in the same style, you'll definitely recognize it. It'll all, all your files will all have probably the same settings to them. They'll be the same bit rate, etc. And so you'll see really quickly if there's an issue. So one of the things to note is that your files have to be in 44 hertz and 16-bit mono. And if they're not, you will get an error when you try and run this. So you can fix that, or you can check to confirm. If you look at one of your WAV files and go to properties, and then, where'd that go? Let's try it again. There we go. Under audio properties, you'll see here that if you have the right thing, it should be sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz and sample size of 16-bit. If you don't have those two things, you need to edit your audio file. Now, I'm not going to cover that in this video. You can do that easily with something like Audacity, where you just load it up and then you just go file, export, wave, and just make sure those settings match this. But 44.1 kilohertz, 16-bit sample size. I will do another video. In fact, I was going to do it today, but I'm not going to have time, where I walk through some more audio-related tools. So watch for a tutorial from me on that. But in the meantime, if you're not sure how to do this, it's fairly simple. You can just look up, how do I resample audio files? It's very straightforward, and you might have to do that. Now, I have a software I love called DB Power Amp, which actually allows me to do it right from the right-click menu. I can actually grab a whole group of files and hit this convert to, and then I can change all of their bit depth and sample rate all at once. This works for me most of the time. There are times it doesn't work. Certain audio files, depending on where they were generated, cannot work with that. For example, audio files generated in certain audio software, like I think software generated in Pro Tools, doesn't work with that. There's something wrong. There's some extra bit that gets added. There are certain audio software that will generate files that you can't convert in batch, but you generally can export them manually with Audacity. So just be aware of that. That's just an issue some of you might run into, and that is why. And so like I said, I'll go over a method in Audacity to do it. I'll probably... well, I just showed you DB Power Amp. The DB Power Amp is not free. Audacity is free, though. So if you find that your XWM files aren't generating, or if their files they're weird, like you can't listen to these by default. You can listen to them in the game, but if you find that you're going through all these steps and certain of your audio files just aren't working in the game, even though you went through this process, it might be that your original wave either wasn't the correct sample rate and sample size, or it came from some weird piece of software. And I'm pretty sure Pro Tools is the one we've had the problems with on our team, but it might be other software. We've never really locked down the full cause of it. We've just known that occasionally we have to go tweak our audio files. So know that might be the case for you as well. Okay, so going back into here, so once you have those XWM files and the lip files generated, you can finally run the LipFuser XWM. This is ultra fast. I don't think I've ever run into trouble with this. What I've actually run into trouble instead is I'll go through, one of the things I like to do once I'm at this step is I will sort my files by type. And then I will select all of one type, and I'll select all my WAV files and look down at the bottom here and it'll tell me how many items I selected. Then I'll do the same thing for each of the other types and make sure the number matches to make sure that none of the steps got skipped. This is especially important with lip files. So if you set up your audio or your sound files in the creation kit, your lines, your character lines, if you set them up incorrectly in some way, it can fail to generate the lip files. So some of the most common issues with that are failing to set up the voice type correctly, failing to condition your dialogue correctly, like with having an alias set up. All things you'll learn more about as we go through the dialogue series, but just know that it's possible that lip files won't generate, and you have to be aware of that. So if you find that lip files aren't generating, you're going to want to deal with that before you proceed, because then you might end up having to rerun these BAT files. So there's a couple of things you can do if you can't get a lip file generated. I'm going to assume that in this case, you've exhausted all efforts, you're sure that you followed all my steps, and you know your stuff's conditioned correctly. Again, we'll talk about more of that in future dialogue series of this series. So hopefully, way in the future when you're watching this, you'll already have gone through all of those. You'll have watched out for all the issues and you'll have resolved those. But last ditch, if you can't figure anything else out, you can launch the creation kit manually, and you can generate the lip files one at a time by hand. This really sucks, but fortunately, it happens very rarely that your audio files aren't going to get generated automatically by the BAT file. But I'll walk you through the process of doing one manually, just for the sake of showing you in case you run into that. I would say if you ever run into it where you have more than a dozen that aren't generating, you're probably going to want to just go in and try and solve the conditions and everything, because doing more than this is going to drive you nuts because it's a bit of a process. Okay, so I skipped a step because I know this takes so long, but basically what you'll do to start, I shouldn't say all you'll do because it's a few steps. What you'll do to start is you'll close out the regular creation kit that has your mod open, and you're going to open it up in creation kit 32.exe. Now, one thing I will warn is when you're operating in creation kit 32.exe, do not save your plugin under any circumstances. In fact, it's such a concern, I would go ahead and go into your data folder and make a backup copy of your plugin in case you accidentally save, because I would consider that file to be garbage now. Do not save anything in the creation kit 32-bit. It's going to be unstable. So once you've loaded your plugin into the 32-bit creation kit, you're going to open up your quest that has the dialogue lines that were failing to generate the lip files. Now, if they were under a scene, well, unfortunately, you're screwed. Basically, the 32-bit creation kit cannot show scene dialogue correctly. It just puts this gray box here, and there's no way to generate the lip files for those. So for that, you end up having to go through an extra step, which I'll show you in a second. And I'm not even going to show you, I'm just going to talk you through it, because most of you, if you're just following through the series, you don't even know enough to follow what I'm talking about. So I'll do it in a quick high level, because the only people who likely have run into this are pretty advanced users anyway. So I'll save that for a moment. So for most of you, your dialogue while you're getting started is going to be under these tabs, the combat favors, detection, miscellaneous, etc. So you basically find the files that didn't generate lip files. You're going to open up the topic info by double clicking on the line. Then you'll open up the response text, the actual response. You'll open that up and you'll get this screen here. This is where you would have found your file name if you were trying to get the voice files. And you're going to click on the actual voice type here, so the VT-gath, and you'll see it says lip file no. So we're going to check this little from wave here and hit generate wave or generate lip file. And if I click on here again, you can see now the lip says yes. Other way I could confirm is going back in here, and off camera I deleted all the other files, so I just had the wave, and now you'll see a lip file. So you can generate them manually one at a time that way in a pinch. So that's the crappy way to do it. I know there are some people who didn't know about the bat file method and have done that by hand for entire mods, so kudos to them for going through that struggle. But that's a backup method if you're finding that certain lip files aren't being generated. So if you are one of the poor souls who has a scene that's not working and you're positive that the audio is all conditioned correctly, there are a couple things you can try. And you would do this in the normal creation kit, not in the 32-bit. I'm just sitting on this screen for the sake of talking about it. So one thing you could do would be simplify the conditioning. So get rid of any conditioning that's about globals or anything like that, or anything about factions, and just get it down to where all it is the voice type or the alias check. And for those of you guys, if you're not following what I'm talking about, don't worry. This is not targeted at you. This is a more advanced thing. I just want to let some people know who are watching this who are advanced users. So that's one thing you could do. If you strip down the conditions down to one of those two things, just voice type or just the alias check, the lib files will probably generate. The other way you can do it, if that's still not working, and I do have some examples where that's the case. I have things stripped down to just an alias check or just a voice type check, and they still don't generate. The next step you could do is convert them into shared info types in the regular CK. So you just open up, and to convert something to shared info, again, guys, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. We will cover this in another tutorial, but for the sake of just helping out some folks here, oops, I can do it right from the screen. You just right click on the line. So you could do this in your scene. You would do it on the, and let me find a better screen to do this from. There's no great screen to do it from in here. I'm going to just, let's see here, bring this up. Is it from here? So any screen, yeah, any screen where you can access the topic info, I guess. You can just do a make shared info. So in the, I guess in scenes, it would be on the dialogue. You'd be on the dialogue window instead of this. And you just right click on there, hit make shared info. It will ask you to give it a unique ID. So you have to give it some unique ID. And then that will show up then on a shared info screen here. And then you'd be able to generate the lib files from this screen for those. So that's, again, advanced. So I am hoping that any of you guys who are running into this can follow that logic. If one of you is running into this trouble, you're watching this video, that my walkthrough there was terrible, my talk through was terrible, feel free to post in the comments. I will 100% respond to you, or reach out to me in some other way, and I'll gladly help, because I know this is a crappy problem to have. It's rare. Most of you won't run into it if you follow all the stuff I talk about in this series, but if you do, I would gladly help, because I know it's unfortunate. Okay, so aside from those potential disaster scenarios, 99% of you're going to be able to do what I showed you at the beginning of the video. Now that you've got your little toolkit set up, so now that you've got your little My Audio Conversion Kit, you're going to just be copy pasting these into the folder where your audio is. So you're going to be just going to your data, sound, voice, name of your mod, pasting your little audio kit files in there, then going back out to Fallout 4, run your, where'd it go? Your lip generator. Let that generate the lib files, then you'll just run the XWM bat, then the lib fuser, and then finally, the last step you do after you've got those done, and actually let me regenerate these again. And I don't remember if this is my second time recording this. I had some problems in a previous recording. So I don't know if I said this or not, but the only file you need to include for players are the fuse files. So you can take your lib files and your XWM and just ditch them. I would recommend keeping backup copies of your wave, because if you ever need to regenerate this or reuse them, this will save you from having to figure out the file names again. And you don't want to have to decompress the fuse, because the quality loss will be substantial, whereas these wave are in your original quality. So I would keep these backed up somewhere just in case you need them. But the lip and XWM, as you see, super fast to generate. There's no reason to waste hard drive space on those. And the fuse file is all you need to package up for your players. And if you've watched my BA2 file videos about sound files, you'll know that there's I've talked about some extra steps you might need to do. I'm going to go ahead and show you how easy it is to add these to bat files. So basically, all we would do is we would get rid of all of those, so that all the left of the fuse. We get rid of our little conversion kit. And now if we open this, let's see here, we'll go into, we'll just open this up. Basically, you could just come in, you would open up your main.ba2, and you would go into your sound voice folder, grab your mod here, and just drag it in. That's it. It's that easy. And then save your archive. So all those .fuse files will all have their paths correct. You don't have to worry about any of the things I've talked about in the past about your compression. Fuse files will work as is, no matter what the compression is. That's that easy. So like I said, if you watched the beginning of my video, that's what you should expect most of the time. But I wanted to cover all of the little corner cases, because I haven't seen anybody else cover them, and I've run into all of them over the years modding this game. So some of you guys likely will as well. If you know of any better ways to do any of this stuff, definitely let me know. I love building quests for this game, but it can be frustrating sometimes. So I want to educate as many people as possible to avoid that frustration and just keep all the focus on the creation of content and not on debugging garbage. So guys, I apologize for the length of that tutorial, and I hope that upfront little display will keep you from being too intimidated. It's real easy. Just follow the steps I've shown to get yourself this little workflow set up. Definitely go download the Bethesda Mod School kit from this week, because it'll have these new bat files in it. And as I said, depending on when you're watching this, you might need this little version check patch thing.